The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, has captivated audiences with its visual grandeur and epic storytelling, but one issue has persistently marred the show's otherwise stellar presentation: its problematic use of accents. This accent-related controversy surfaced with particular intensity in Season 1 when the Harfoots, nomadic early ancestors of hobbits, spoke with exaggerated Irish accents. As the show progresses into Season 2, the issue continues to evolve, now extending to other characters and regions within Middle-earth. While accents are part of linguistic world-building in fantasy, in The Rings of Power, they unfortunately reflect stereotypes and biases rooted in real-world classism and regionalism. In this analysis, we will break down the show's accent problem by examining how it relates to character portrayals, narrative tone, and underlying class divisions, and explore its potential cultural implications. Along the way, we'll also consider reactions from critics and audiences alike, raising key questions about how these accent choices could affect both the storytelling and broader cultural narrative. Season 1 of The Rings of Power introduced us to the Harfoot community, an early iteration of the hobbits familiar from The Lord of the Rings. Yet, instead of emphasizing their simplicity or innocence, the show leaned heavily on exaggerated Irish accents, turning the Harfoots into caricatures. This decision, as critic Ed Power noted in the Irish Times, reduced them to twee and guileless figures, perpetuating an offensive stereotype of Irish people as simple, rural, and childlike. The muddy, twig-laden Harfoots, with their stage Irish accents, echoed outdated and harmful images of Irish culture from the pre-industrial era. The problem is not that the Harfoots have an accent at all, but rather the deliberate choice of a stereotyped Irish accent, coupled with their portrayal as simpletons. In contrast, characters with English received pronunciation, RP, the standard upper-class accent, are typically afforded the most serious and complex roles in the show, from high-ranking elves like Elrond and Gil-galad to human leaders in Númenor. This contrast creates an unflattering dichotomy between the noble RP-speaking characters and the rustic Harfoots, reinforcing class divisions within Middle-earth. The accent choices in The Rings of Power aren't just about regional differences. They highlight a disturbing undercurrent of classism. Characters with RP accents tend to be those with power, authority, and serious storylines, while those with regional or working-class accents are relegated to comedic or subservient roles. For example, the dwarves of Khazad-dûm speak with thick Scottish accents, playing into the long-standing fantasy trope of dwarves being gruff, hard-working, and often played for comic relief. While the dwarves do have moments of pathos, particularly in the relationship between Durin Ivy and Elrond, their broad characterization often reduces them to jokes. The orcs, meanwhile, speak in Cockney accents, another working-class British accent. Historically, Cockney has been associated with crime and petty villainy in film and television, and The Rings of Power does little to break this stereotype. Orcs are depicted as unintelligent, violent, and subhuman, a far cry from the sympathetic or nuanced treatment other characters receive. The fact that orcs are assigned this accent reinforces negative class-based associations, suggesting that lower-class or regional accents are inherently inferior or tied to undesirable traits. The Harfoots, dwarves, and orcs are given accents that, in the context of British culture, signal lower status, unintelligence, or comedic roles. In contrast, the elves and Númenóreans, all speaking in RP, are positioned as educated, powerful, and serious. This stark division in how accents are used reinforces societal hierarchies in Middle-earth, reflecting real-world biases. In Season 2, The Rings of Power introduced Tom Bombadil, played by Rory Kinnear, an enigmatic yet whimsical figure with deep connections to Middle-earth's past. Bombadil, like the Harfoots, speaks with a strong regional accent, specifically from southwest England. According to Kinnear, this accent choice was deliberate, as he saw Cornwall as the oldest part of Britain, a fitting parallel to Bombadil's quasi-immortal nature. While Kinnear's reasoning may hold water within the context of Bombadil's ancient roots, this accent choice once again ties into regional stereotypes. In British media, the Southwest accent is frequently used as shorthand for unsophisticated rural characters. Bombadil's jovial and carefree nature aligns with this stereotype, perpetuating the idea that characters with such accents are not to be taken seriously. Despite Bombadil's deep wisdom and mythic background, his portrayal leans into this yokel archetype, undermining the complexity of his character. The association between RP accents and power in the Rings of Power is inescapable. Characters like Sauron, Galadriel, and Pharazôn all speak in ERP, symbolizing not only their authority but also their intelligence and sophistication. Even Sauron, who initially appears with a Northern English accent as the Southlander Halbrand, switches to RP as soon as he reveals his true identity and gains power. This shift from regional to RP accent reflects a troubling trend in the show. The higher a character rises in status, the more likely they are to adopt RP. It sends the message that power and proper speech go hand in hand, and that regional or working-class accents are only appropriate for characters of lesser significance. This reinforces not only classist stereotypes, but also the idea that those from regional backgrounds cannot wield true power without assimilating into the RP-speaking elite. One of the most significant disappointments in the Rings of Power's accent choices is the lack of diversity in its portrayal of Middle-earth's inhabitants. Despite the casting of actors from various backgrounds, Owain Arthur Durin Ive is Welsh, Morfydd Clark, Galadriel, is also Welsh, and Ismael Cruz Cordova Arondir is Puerto Rican. The characters' accents are uniformly homogenized to fit the established class structures of Middle-earth. Robert Aramayo, who plays Elrond, is from Yorkshire and naturally speaks with a Northern English accent. Yet in the role of Elrond, he adopts ARP, reinforcing the idea that important or powerful characters must conform to a narrow standard of speech. This decision prevents Middle-earth from reflecting the true diversity of its actors and reinforces the homogenization of power dynamics through language. The accent controversy in the Rings of Power has sparked significant debate among fans and critics alike. While some viewers may see these choices as harmless or even fitting within the context of a fantasy world, others recognize the damaging stereotypes these accents perpetuate. The use of accents in the show not only reinforces real-world biases, but also misses the opportunity to challenge these narratives in a meaningful way. By relying on tired stereotypes, the Rings of Power perpetuates a class-based view of the world that associates power with proper speech and relegates regional accents to the fringes of comedy or villainy. This has broader cultural implications, particularly for audiences who speak with these accents in real life and see their dialects used as shorthand for negative traits. Ultimately, the accent problem in the Rings of Power isn't just about authenticity within a fantasy setting. It's about how we, as viewers, internalize the messages that media sends us about class, power, and intelligence. By choosing to map the accents of Middle-earth onto real-world regional and class divisions, the show reinforces existing hierarchies that favor the elite and marginalize the working class. The question that arises is, could the Rings of Power have made different choices? Could the show have embraced a more diverse linguistic landscape where accents aren't tied to outdated stereotypes, but instead reflect the rich variety of its actors and the world of Middle-earth? The answer is undoubtedly yes. However, by taking the easy route and leaning on established archetypes, the show misses an opportunity to challenge these narratives and create a more inclusive world. As the Rings of Power continues to develop, it remains to be seen whether the showrunners will address this issue or double down on the status quo. For now, though, the accent problem serves as a reminder that even in a fantastical world, the real-world implications of our choices in language and portrayal can have lasting effects.